enforcement assisted diversion, where at that first point of contact, when someone's clearly having a mental health crisis, like Mr. Marshall, we don't bring them to jail. We bring them to a mental health facility. And that's what the DA's office should be championing, should be out there raising money for, building those partnerships, because people like Mr. Marshall don't deserve to be in our jail, they deserve to be in the hospital.
Question. We're trying to take as many of these questions. We want to hear from everyone. Go right ahead.
Ms. McCann, it's easy to say, if I'm the DA, I will face up to the cops, the sheriffs, their minions. But, and I believe that you have done so in the past, what is it in your experience that led you to be able to do that? It isn't easy, I know that from being a judge.
Thank you, Judge Jones. As the manager of safety, I disciplined officers repeatedly, and I was repeatedly frustrated by our Civil Service Commission, who would then often overturn or change that discipline. So I think we need, as a city, to look at that system, the Civil Service Commission system, to make sure that those who are actually in charge of the departments have the authority to impose the discipline that is appropriate. I also, as a deputy DA, did prosecute a different police officer for a felony who did go to prison. And that case went on appeal, and it was sustained on appeal. So I've done it, I know how to do it. I also think we need to be giving our officers better tools to handle situations where they are dealing with someone with mental illness. The Marshall case is a perfect example. You can see Mr. Marshall walking up and down the Sally Port, clearly agitated, dragging a blanket. If there had been someone who could have gone and talked to him and talked him down, he wouldn't be dead today. And he shouldn't be dead today. We should have our deputies trained, or at least have trained people in the jails who know how to handle those kinds of situations.
And maybe in some cases we need to get those mental health people to talk to those deputies so that we can talk them down.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Question for Mr. Moore.
That's called moderator's prerogative. Go on.
Okay, my question is, what is the process for prosecuting? Because I think that we have an understanding, a basic understanding of how someone can get prosecuted. But like if someone goes to jail, there's only two options to identify them. If you're black, you have to say black. If you're white, you have to say white. But if you're Latino, you technically qualify as white. So I think that's interesting because I'm actually biracial. I'm half black and half Puerto Rican. So I would have to either pick and choose not to never go to jail. But the whole point is, what is the process? Because it appears that obviously the process seems to criminalize more who qualify or are identified in the demographic as white.
I like the word you use, qualify as white. Like it's a prize.
Well, let me, if I can have you stay up here so I make sure I understand your question a little more. Is your question, explain your question a little more. I want to make sure I understand. Are you talking about the demographics of the process or the actual process? Okay. Okay, sure. So the process is exactly this. The police go out, they're either proactive policing or they're called out to a situation. They investigate that case, a detective is assigned. The detective then brings that case to us. We review that case and determine if we believe we can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. If we do, then we make a determination as to what charges that are actually going to be filed and charged. That is how the process works. And then of course, once the filing happens, the court happens. Whether or not our office versus police enforcement patterns is causing is causing this issue of a disparity in the races that end up in the criminal justice system, or the folks that end up in the criminal justice system, is our doing or is police doing, is something we have to understand. In New Jim Crow, they talked about mandated data recording for police and prosecutors. Their data means nothing without doing something with it. That's why I'm committed to bringing in an independent institution to look at the patterns of our filing, to look at the patterns of our plea agreements,
Thank you,
which
Mr.
cases
Bowler.
are going to trial, so we can understand that data.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perry?
Mr. Kerrigan, like you, I am against the death penalty. However, if we go to Marshall Fields, if we go to Ferraro, the two prominent death penalty cases, those have been crimes of people of color. Why, as a DA, would you tell a victim's family you would not want the death penalty when they would want the death penalty?
So the question is, and this some people say, well, you're not enforcing the law, you're not respecting the Nixon Bill of Rights, and that's not true. The death penalty is 100% discretionary. Nothing requires a DA to bring a death penalty. It is completely discretionary. And once we resort to that discretion, we have 3 men on death row in Colorado. 3 African American men, they all out of Arapahoe County, all 3 went to the same high school. That's what happens when you have discretion around the death penalty. But with regard to the victims' families, the Victim Bill of Rights allows them to have input. It allows them to have a say, and they have a right to be informed of the court process. But no one here is going to stand up and tell you, if the victims want the death penalty, the DA is obligated to bring it to you. That's a falsehood. The fact is, it's an important public policy decision that we have an opportunity to stand up in the city of Denver and say, not in our name, not in the 21st century, we're not going to try to kill one of our own citizens.
Remain standing, Mr. Kerrigan, and another question.
I'd like to ask if you would follow up on mental health. I get so nervous asking questions. I'm sorry.
Just take a deep breath and keep going. That's it.
Regarding mental health, you spoke about the importance of the DA's office at the point of contact, first contact, and then you made reference also to advocating for more mental health care and advocacy. What could the DA's office do to be prevenient, to be preventive in keeping persons from having that first contact with the police and the justice system?
Very good question. So a couple things that are really important. Again, this program called LEAD, where you have officers who are properly trained to identify when a criminal act may be driven by a mental health situation. And because literally there is a criminal act there, you need buy-in from the DA's office to say, okay, officers, we are okay with you not bringing that person to jail. Give them an opportunity for a different choice, to send them to a different location of mental health facility. The other thing the DA's office could be doing is using that office as a holy pulpit to say, every time that we're not putting someone in jail, put them in somewhere else instead, we're saving $55 a day, which is the cost of keeping a single person in the Denver County jail. And then, for those that end up with the system, we need deputies, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges who are well aware of the mental health issues that are driving so many things. I'm co-chair of the Mayor's Crime Prevention Control Committee, and we oversee Denver's recovery court, which is mostly municipal offenses, where we get the repeat offenders, and they're given small rewards and trainings and programs so that they don't come back.
We've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to ask these persons who are waiting in line, because we will never get to all their questions, if you guys would hang around afterwards for a few minutes and to address all of their questions that they have. Here is the question that we want to sort of close with and ask you all to talk about. Does any of you all know how much the district attorney makes here in Denver? The salary, you know what the salary is? One of the issues, and you've heard that cases being prosecuted have gone up 43%. Back in March of 2011, the Denver Post ran an article about District Attorney Chambers. Are you all familiar with that article and what she tried to do? She wanted to make bonuses and compensation for DAs based on the number of convictions that a DA makes. That's a common practice in Colorado. And she was willing to admit it. But the question that I want to ask you all, how are you going to deal with that kind of internal temptation? Because assistant district attorneys aren't paid the way they should. Maybe some of you will argue that you're not being paid or won't be paid what you deserve. But the issue is that's a serious issue if that's an underlying supposition in the DA's office that you've got to try so many cases in order to get your incentives for the job. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, please. That absolutely ludicrous. The pay of the deputy district attorneys should be in no way influenced by how many convictions they're doing, how many cases that they're prosecuting. I myself am a deputy district attorney. It's not about wins and losses, and it never should be. When in 2008, when we did furloughs in the city and county of Denver, when we shed, I think about 10 or 12 attorney positions, I was happy to take on that extra work. I was happy to take the cut in pay because I cared about what I did. I cared about the responsibility I had as a district attorney. That's what this is about. It should never be about pay. It should never be about wins and losses. I absolutely commit to everybody that that will never enter the discussions or surrounding my office.
I completely agree, and I'm running as someone who reviews attorneys all the time. I'm a partner in a law firm. I review probably 20 different attorneys in a year. And that's one of the things I've heard from my friends in the Denver DA's office, that there's not enough systematic practices for reviewing, especially the senior attorneys. They're promoted on seniority. And we need to put merit in there. And that merit isn't how many times you go to trial. It isn't how many convictions you get. It's a 360 review from judges, from criminal defense attorneys, from colleagues, from staff, from pro se defendants, from the community. Because again, it's going to be their job description if I'm DA to be out in your community, serving and giving back. And that's what counts, not how many convictions.
Reverend Holmes, I assume that because that line did not lead, that we're going to have to figure a way to push through those questions. And I think we can, and I can safely probably assume that both of you disagree that DA should be paid based on how many. Would you say you disagree with that?
Yes.
Okay, the answer is
Absolutely.
Pastor Powell, is that the authoritative word from God? We're going to go beyond?
Yes, God left the
God
about
didn't
30
give it.
minutes ago.
God
I just
didn't
did
give
it
it.
on my own.
All right.
I think we can push through it.
Okay.
If we get, this is the rule, to make a brief question, and one candidate gets to answer your question. And we rotate that. Let's push through. This is like speed dating.
Quickly.
Briefly, quickly, and then candidates, I need speed dating answers.
I have two questions that I...
One question. Choose the best one.
So this is for all of the candidates. How would you ensure the humane and equitable treatment of undocumented immigrants facing criminal charges and deportation?
So you get to answer on behalf of all the candidates.
On behalf of everybody today, it is entirely and utterly irrelevant why you were here in this country, why you have chosen Colorado to be your home, and whether or not you have a passport or a driver's license that you can't get and it's driving you crazy. It's not relevant. There's also a provision called the U visa for women who are not here lawfully, who are victims of domestic violence, and we fully support the application of youth visas for those women.
Thank you. Does anybody disagree with that? Raise your hand. If you have another spin on it, raise your hand. You disagree with it? Do all the, see y'all trying to mess up my speed dating.
The youth visa covers witnesses and victims. It's not confined to domestic violence.
Okay, the U visa, I absolutely support, the district attorney's office is not actually doing that program right now. It's being done through the Denver Police Department. I would like to see the district attorney's office get back involved in that, and I've talked to several immigration attorneys who are concerned about the fact that the U visa is not the
We got it.
process. Okay.
Thank you. So the other point that they haven't talked about, which is key, is the DA's office should be taking into account collateral consequences for people who don't have documents or have immigration status. I personally represented someone from Uganda with criminal charges. He took a felony, he would have been deported and killed. We got a deal that prevented that. Denver needs to make sure we're taking that into account. We got it.
Second question.
Agreed with collateral consequences. I will make sure my deputies take that into account. The U visas apply to all victims and witnesses for certain offenses that qualify. We do it in a partnership with the Denver Police Department, so we have one agency that's handling it for consistency and ease of the victim.
Thank you.
Next question. Next question.
So next question.
No. I need a question from Reverend Holmes. I'm trying to get us into your time frame. So I need one question per person. And I need you to address this question to one candidate.
Yes,
Brief
this is
question.
Beth McCann. Thank you all so much for acknowledging that you will have a lot to learn before you're ready to take this position or before you'll be elected by us. But Beth McCann, in 1992, as the manager of safety, you were the oversight of BPD, or part of, and on MLK Day in 1992, the KKK held a rally and they were given the mic to speak. They were given protections by the police. They were escorted and given sanctuary within the state capitol. Currently, you claim to stand for justice and equality, and can you explain why you permitted the police to protect white supremacists while beating and pepper spraying and arresting people of color, many of whom may be in this room today, and their allies? And do you regret not holding anyone accountable in that time?
Please explain in 30 seconds why you did that.
Well, the effort was to try to prevent any kind of further escalation of the violence that did occur. And so the department has the obligation to make sure that everyone is safe. And part of that was being able to remove the KKK folks quickly. So they were taken out through the Capitol, down and out through some tunnels so that they would be taken to a bus that was far away, because the fear was if they were in the community, the violence would have increased rather than decreased.